Good morning, everybody. It is, what is it? February 27th, 2023. It is Road to Recovery, and it is time for another Monday morning chat. Um, yeah, I need to get consistent about things, and it's been a busy month for me. But here I am, gonna keep sticking with this and making sure I give anyone who wants to the option of being able to talk or chat about their recovery or recovery related issues, ask me questions, or just sit back and listen as I ramble on about things. This morning, I'm going to talk about, I got a lot of different topics. I have had started up a Porn Addicts Anonymous group in my local town. And for a couple of weeks there, we had, it was just a couple of fellas just sitting around having conversations. And then my last week, we out of the blue got a lot of people and filled up a room. So it was kind of good because it verified to me that the demand is definitely out there for having these sort of recovery rooms and being able to do these sort of discussions. But um, yeah, it was good. Everything about it was good. I was able to have an old sponsee just appear and come back in and start telling me things. And man, you could really feel the healing inside of the room. We had a new person that's never been in recovery groups pop in. So there was lots of good things that happened as a result of that. And it felt validating because I've been saying for the longest time that there's no substitute for face-to-face meetings. There's just no substitute for face-to-face meetings. I mean, I understand that during COVID, it kind of allowed the Zoom culture and Discord culture to kind of take off. Um, but there's limitations to. I'm sorry, there just is limitations to what you can do online versus what you can do face to face. You're not going to sit down and have one-on-one conversations inside of a recovery room that's online because you can't. There's a limitation to that, but there's no limitations inside of a face-to-face room. You can peel somebody off, have a conversation in a parking lot, and or go to another room or something like that, and just be able to talk to people. Just have we had we after our meeting we sat down and no one held a gun to anyone's head and said stick around after the meeting. Everyone stuck around for a solid hour after that meeting just to talk. Right, that's what you lose in an online room. You can't replace that. The socialization that happens around recovery is so healing and so powerful. Anyway, I just wanted to get that one off my chest. From a conversation standpoint, I talked about a lot last week about lots of different topics, and I'm looking through my Twitter account right now, and one of the topics that I had talked about was, you know, this concept of addiction in general creates liars. How does it create liars? Uh, it starts off very simply that the person who is fostering an addiction is trying their best to conceal it. So initially, you have avoidance, right? Because they don't want to have anybody find out about the fact that this is a behavior that they're trying to they want to conceal themselves. So they're trying to avoid any sort of criticism at all in their behavior. So it's natural that avoidance is the very first tactic that they do. But rolled into that, once the addiction really starts getting its grips on a person, um, lying becomes essential because they're trying to do the activity more and more. In this case, porn consumption. They're trying to do the activity more and more, and by the very nature of doing that, you're going to have to say no to other things. So it's whether it's friends, family functions, obligations. Gradually, little by little, those things start to lower in their importance to the addict, and the addiction starts going up, 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 and in terms of importance. And then choices are needed to be made, and often that choice dictates that you're going to have to either break an obligation or in some cases just flat out, just tell a person that I can't do that, whatever that thing is. um, and that necessitates lying sometimes. Sometimes the lies will start out small, little white lies. Everybody tells little white lies, right? And then the lies become more and more gradual. And often, what happens is that the addict becomes so conditioned to lying so that they can free up time for their addiction, that the lie is no longer processed. It becomes a habit. Lying becomes a habit. So the thinking mechanism, and if you're an unpracticed liar, right? The thinking mechanism that's involved takes a little bit of time. So anyway, when we're starting to work on the 12-step rules and trying to get into recovery rooms, we're trying to deactivate the lying mechanism. So actually just peeling people back and saying, you know what, let's start from scratch and get that person in front of a room and get them to start talking again. Just start conversations. And when those conversations are happening, as a sponsor, as a person who's actually helping these other people out, you're listening all the time for, lies, for people just saying bullshit and calling them on it. And what I tell my new sponsees is that you get into as many rooms as you possibly can early on and you talk. You start having conversations. And when you're inside of that room, you tell the truth all the time. You get in the practice of constantly telling the truth. And it stops the lying habit. It stops you from getting into this automatic, spitting out a lie every single time you're uncomfortable or afraid, because that's the habit loop that happens there. They don't want to break out of that cycle. It's almost incapable. They've formed a habit of deception, and they have to stop. That's right, JL. It is. It's very much a spiritual thing. What else did we have? Um, by the way, if there's anything you want to talk about, just dump it in the chat. Let me know, and we'll bring it up. Oh, the other thing this ties into this is ego. Um, Not everybody has a big ego that comes into the rooms, but the lying mechanism has a lot to do with ego because you're trying to protect your ego. So there's a lot of pretentiousness that comes along with this, and I've seen it in so many people. Um, you know, I've got to make this observation. I'll share this observation with you. You would think that a lot of people that are on the side of these porn recovery rooms would be, you know, maybe, I don't know, looking like an addict, like looking like somebody you would find in NA or whatever. I would say a vast majority of the people that I've met inside of my rooms were executives, largely white, not all, but largely white, mostly male, mostly high income. I think about all those things I just threw out there. It's like, what type of personality trait do you think is going to be associated with that profile? Um, a lot of these guys have got a fucking ego on their shoulder, and it's hard for them to be able to be vulnerable because they're egocentric. And part of the recovery process is trying to address some of these personality traits because they're toxic for the individual. They don't even realize it's a toxic trait, because it's helped their survival in so many different ways. But when it comes to their addiction, it fosters the addiction. Being an egomaniac fosters addiction. And the way it fosters addiction is because the ego is always trying to protect itself. It doesn't want to accept damage. So, what's a person who's got a huge ego going to do if you try attacking them? Oh, wow, they're gonna be defensive. They're gonna freaking be defensive. That's exactly what happens. Generational curse. Yeah, you're absolutely right, JL. It's it can be a generational curse, although yeah, it's an interesting observation. Something I got to reflect on too. There's a lot of people either my age or older that get into the recovery rooms. Interestingly enough, in this new group that I just formed, I'm finally starting to see some young faces, like guys that are in their 20s. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna reflect on that one for a bit because I need to. I think that's going to be something at some point I'll start talking about the generational differences and generational curses. Um, but it's a really interesting topic to think about. Uh, oh, that's I wanted to start a talk about this last week, and I never got the opportunity to. There's a certain percentage of writers that are out there that like to focus their porn addiction. See, they don't believe in porn addiction. That's the problem. There's a lot of writers that are out there that like to talk and write about porn addiction who don't actually believe that you can have a porn addiction. Um, and I'd say the vast majority of those writers, they want to say that not just porn addiction, but like behavioral addictions in general fall into a completely different category. And the one trope that I can carve out from like 70, 80% of these writers, I would say, is that they want to be able to classify porn addicts as people who have moral incongruities with their addiction. So, whether they're religious or they see themselves as bad because they do the consumption, that that is what fuels their consumption, that it's not really an addiction at all, but it's instead a personality dynamic that's manifesting in a negative outcome. And all I have to say is what complete and utter bullshit that is. And I can say that from my own firsthand experience. And they'll probably be the people out there that'll say, well, you can't trust your firsthand experience. The fuck I can't. Like, I was exposed to pornography at a younger age, thanks to my dad. And, you know, it fostered that way. Like if I am left to my own devices and there's like a stack of porn magazines or I have unfiltered access to pornography on a computer, if I did not have recovery in my life, I would be right into it. Like I would probably chew up 8 to 10 hours just like looking at porn. I would do it. I would do it. There's no out inside of addiction. You can't just recover. You stay in recovery, and that's a way of holding off the addiction. But I've kind of accepted, using the disease model of addiction, I've kind of accepted that whatever neurologically happened to me from all those years of consuming pornography, that it has made me incapable of being able to put the brakes on really hard. Now, I've, through recovery, been able to put on a lot of different tactical layers to be able to apply, a slowing mechanism down. It's like tapping on the brakes before I hit a wall. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that, oh yeah, the pornography addiction just magically went away. And likewise, these writers, they want to write things in the perspective that a person that gets into an addictive or compulsive cycle with pornography shouldn't be called an addict. They should be rightfully be called something else. Um, and that to me is it's erasing the people, at the experiences of the people who actually go through this. Can a porn addict have shame? Yeah, yeah. Here's the thing I always say about this: if you erased the shame, if you had a magic eraser, can erase the shame from that person's mind, would the addiction still exist? Would there? What is an addiction? Um, it is the act of actively consuming whatever, in this case, pornography, but it could be anything, actively consuming a substance or thing or process, and having the not having the capacity to stop despite the fact that it's harming them, right? That's what an addiction is. Um, that label in and of itself describes exactly what's going on with porn addicts. They can't stop, it's hurting them. And I believe, and a lot of studies have been able to back this, that there is a definite neurological basis for why this happens. And these writers, there's lots of them out there. They're still writing like it's not a big deal. And um, I remember Gary from Your Brain on Porn uh, talking about this a lot before he passed away. And he was actively in war with a lot of these guys. He could see through kind of the bullshit that they were facilitating. Now, I will say that, guys like David Lay, uh, some of the PhDs that are out there, they may believe in what they're saying. Like they may have a profound belief that there actually isn't any harm to pornography. Um, but the problem is that they'll ignore all the counter evidence in trying to uh, stand on their soapbox and back their case, as opposed to what I would say like a legitimate scientist would do. A legitimate scientist would say, well, you know what? Maybe all the studies haven't bridged the gaps in our knowledge yet, but we're not going to deny that these people are having a problem. And part of the problem, I think, is, and some of these writers will accurately point them out, that there's a lot of self-diagnosis going on out there. Like a person say, "Yeah, I'm a porn addict," and they may not necessarily have an actual addiction. They may just, they might be sticking their toes into that water a little too much. But the diagnosis of actual porn addiction is kind of all over the place, man. um you know do we do a self-diagnosis for bipolar depression, or any other psychological ailment you could possibly imagine? No, typically you have a therapist that comes in and puts you through a diagnostic tool. The diagnostic tool spits back out whether or not you fit the criteria for whatever diagnosis they want to go through. um, you know, Walking in saying that you're a porn addict, chances are you probably are. You probably are if you say that you are a porn addict. But you know, to those writers' point, the self-diagnosis is kind of suspect. Um, Now, I will say this: there's plenty of sex therapists out there, despite the fact that porn addiction doesn't have an entry into DSM-5 yet, DMS-5. Um, there's still tools that are out there, and certainly a certified sex addiction specialist will be able to diagnose you as a porn addict. It's just not, an official tool that comes from the DSM-5, but they can still diagnose you. Um, and that's why I kind of say that, if you think you've got an actual porn addiction, if you can afford it, if you have the health insurance, go out, go see a sex addiction therapist. Just go see one and see if you can get an evaluation. Chances are, if you suspect that you are, you probably are, but make it make an official diagnosis out of it, and that way it starts off the beneficial things of going into therapy, and because the second you go through that diagnosis, there's going to be a lot more to unpack. No one arrives at an addiction innocently. There's We just had a discussion about lying, right? No one arrives there innocently. There's always something that's, you're going to have to unpack and kind of look at, and things that you haven't even considered yet. And it's better to have a professional that's got some experience that can help you unpack all those things. Yep. All right, we got 9:21. I'm going to give it 5 more minutes, guys, and then I'm going to rock it up. Take it easy, JL. Thanks for coming in, man. All right. Yeah, and I've just burned through. Um, Just burned through about 4 or 5 things I really wanted to get at. Um, oh, hoarding, porn hoarding. Um, yeah, so porn hoarding. I was a porn hoarder, and that was a generational thing. So, what's a porn hoarder? Typically, the porn hoarder came from the older school of internet users. So, before there was these smart devices, right? We were going through, and we were using the internet to access pornography and downloading it. And the old school hoarders were hoarders when magazines still existed. So there you had the contextual thing of being able to grab onto the magazine, right? Like, I had physical possession of this magazine. It's mine, and I get to jerk off to this. And so especially when you're like a young teenager, man, it's just like Jesus. I've got this prized possession, and like I'm gonna add it to my collection. And so you have a spank library over in the corner, of just like beautiful women doing sexy things. And you know that's the start of the hoarding, like because you recognize what it is. It's a pornography, especially back in the 80s, was like a prized possession. You couldn't just get it anywhere, even though I was able to find pornography in a lot of different spots. But you just couldn't stumble across it on the street. You had to go looking for it. So the aspect of hoarding becomes paramount, because now you're actually able to maintain and uh, use your collection. And move into the digital age. So things are slow. And pornography in the early days of the internet age, I'm going to say starting in like the early 90s, um, you had bandwidth issues. So if you were downloading an image that was maybe 640 by 480, that shit might take 5 minutes. Yeah, at a 2400 baud modem, man. It might. You, you kids don't understand, man. Back in the old days, but it would take forever to download an image. And it just might be like a boob or something. There may not even be much to it. So like that rarity, the rarity and the complexity at which you could access online pornography was difficult. um, and then it got a little faster. Bandwidth started increasing. We went to 5200 baud modems, and things started getting a little faster. Then companies like Comcast came in, and then cable became the capability. So we're pushing forward about 8 to 10 years now, and so now you're getting 100 kilobyte per second access to services like AOL. And on AOL, if you know where to go look, you could you could get lots of porn, right? So then things became faster and faster. Now for me and my porn hoarding, I had folders set up, and I was constantly downloading things. First, I was unorganized. Then I started trying organizing things, like having folders for certain things. And that typically is how the hoarding starts. Like you go through this ritualization. We talk about ritualization a lot inside of porn addiction. There could be ritualization that happens as a routine to downloading your pornography, but ritualization can also happen after you've downloaded the pornography. And some of the ritualization goes to categorization, commodification. Like you go through all of these things where you're trying to look at the product that you've downloaded and sort it off into its own class, and you basically covet the thing you're coveting. And I don't mean to sound biblical about that, but it really is. Like it's a this covetous like lifestyle that you start going into as a porn addict. It becomes in and of itself a unique thing. And so porn hoarders, they're a unique class of porn addict. And those people who are doing the coveting, right? They have to be treated slightly different, because here's what happens: letting go. You treat them exactly like hoarders. Letting go becomes so difficult because they've spent so much of their time and their addiction, not just seeking and finding, but organizing and downloading and coveting, right? So this covetous nature of what they're doing, they don't want to let it go. And it took literally for me having the state freaking police come to my house to, that you could, if you're new to this channel, you can go look at my other video on what happened. But yeah, I had occasionally teenagers like, just because it was looking at Stickam and Omegle files, and there was teenagers in those videos, man. And but I seized onto that stuff. I didn't want to let it go. Um, so yeah, that'll happen, man, and it's part of the sickness of what this disease does to you. There's lots of people who come into the rooms that don't get the luxury of having, a man in a uniform come to your house, which I would never wish on anybody. But think about it. It's like if you're dealing with a hoarder like that, what do you say you're due to get that person to delete their stash? And they got to delete it, because if they don't delete it, there's going to be this set thing going on inside of their mind. They might stay away from it 30, 60, 90 days, right? So in no fap rules, they would say, okay, stay away from it for 90 days, you'll be fine. But no, man, the knowledge that that folder still exists with all those files inside of it will bring you back. And the first thing you have to do before you even try going down the recovery path is find the courage to delete it. Delete it all. You have to delete it all. You have to let go. And you've got to do it before you start going into your recovery journey. Regardless of what recovery journey you pick, you've got to let it go. And it's going to be good for you. I don't even have to tell you, it's going to be good for you. You've got to let it go. And as for the rest of you guys who are just like, using sites like Pornhub or whatever, you're fine. At there, you're just getting rid of your bookmark. And it's still, there's a process to it. I get it. There's still a process to it. You've got your own process and your own rituals that you're probably going through with those sites, right? But when it comes to hoarders, man, it's like there's this crazy sense of possession that comes along with it. And those guys, you need a unique set of gloves. So if you're sponsoring somebody like that, get them. The very first thing you do is get them to delete their stash. Find out if they have a stash and get them to delete their stash. Don't even try doing anything else. Oh, hi, John Q. I just met you in a meeting. Oh, hey, are you still using pornography? No, no. Do you still have pornography in your house? Oh, you do? Oh, okay. Hey, I'm gonna give you my phone number. When you get home, delete that. Delete that and call me back. And don't call me back until you've deleted it. Oh, yeah, we can talk about other things, but don't. You're going to call me back after you've deleted that, right? That's the conversation you need to have with those guys. So anyway, I'm gonna head on out. It's 9:30 already. I've killed 30 minutes, and so here's the deal. Before I head on out, I just want to say that if you have or need any assistance, you can reach me at road to recovery 11 at yahoo.com. That's road to number two recovery 11 at yahoo.com. You can reach me on my, you'll see up if you're using a website or your cell phone. There is a link on top to my Twitter account. You can DM me up there if you need to communicate. I am still looking for people that would want to do an interview. If you're, a brave soul, and we can still keep things anonymous. You can turn the camera off if you want to, but if you want to do an interview with me and it's kind of talk about your addiction and your recovery, drop me a line or drop me the DM. I'm still setting up interviews, and the purpose of doing that is to allow other people to hear and see what it's like going through recovery, and to hear and see what experiences others are going through. I open that door for anyone. My channel, as you can see, is not monetized in any single way. I have no intention of doing that. This is all 12th step work for me. I'm giving back. So, anyway, that's it. I am Road to Recovery. Peace out and stay on that road.